Are they profiteering, the banks?
It's certainly the spread between what they're charging in mortgage rates and what they're giving in savings rates seems to have got bigger. You've just discussed some of the figures there. On a basic instant access account, which a lot of people will have, even though mortgage rates are about 6%, the bank rate's about 4.5%, some of the banks are only paying about 1% on these accounts. So I think it's quite right that the regulator tries to do something about this.
So are you going to go as far as say that the banks are profiteering or profiting, however you want to describe it?
You could use that word.
What word would you use?
I think they are not serving their customers as well as they could if they allow that spread to get very wide. Because apart from anything else, this is how a rise in interest rates is supposed to work. It's supposed to encourage people to save. But how can you encourage people to save if you're offering really pitifully low savings rates? So it's quite right that the regulator calls them in and tells them they've got to do more to pass. They're passing on the pain to mortgage holders. They've got to do more to pass on the benefits to savers.
So I'm going to press you for a third time. Are they profiteering?
Well, their profits will increase because in a higher interest rate environment, if that spread increases...
I can get the maths. I mean, I'm not good at maths, but I can do those figures. Well, I mean, how would you describe their actions?
I think they need to do more. There's an opportunity for the banks to treat people fairly here. If they allow that spread to increase, they won't be treating people fairly. And
should the government get involved in making sure that they do?
Well, it's the regulator who's meeting them on Thursday, the Financial Conduct Authority. I hope that the government is telling the regulator to do what it can to make sure that these interest rate rises are passed on to savers.
OK. What about supermarkets and the fact that they were charging 6p a litre more than they should be for fuel last year to improve their overall profit?
Yeah, well, they call it the feather and rocket, don't they? When the oil price goes up, the price goes up like a rocket, but when it comes down, drops like a feather. I think this is a really important finding for a couple of reasons. The price of a litre of fuel is one of the, the most known prices in society. People know what they pay for a litre of fuel, and those profit margins went up by about 6 pence a litre in the supermarkets. For diesel, it was up to 13 pence a litre more. So there's going to be legislation on this now. Frankly, the government should bring that in right away. Parliament's not exactly, certainly the House of Commons, is not exactly too busy at the moment with lots of heavy legislation.
I understand that, but what do you actually think of the practice? It was my question.
Oh, the practice is clearly wrong. They've been gouging customers when people are really suffering with the cost of living. And there's another problem for the supermarkets here. Petrol's an important part of their business, but their main business is selling groceries. They're always telling us we've got a really competitive environment for groceries. We're keeping prices as low as possible. If we can't trust them on fuel, how do they expect our customers to trust them on the grocery prices as well? So I think not only was this unfair to drivers, I think it was a really short-sighted thing to do if supermarkets want to be trusted by the general public.
We can't trust you, according to the government on Just Stop Oil. Rishi Sunak writing in the Sun newspaper this morning saying that on one hand your boss is condemning the protesters, but on the other hand he's allowing Just Stop Oil to help shape your party's policy when it comes to, in particular, the renewable sources such as wind and nuclear and blocking domestic oil and gas.
I remember the days when Rishi Sunak stood up in Parliament as Chancellor and announced that he wanted the UK to be the home of green finance. He was in favour of all this. What happened to that, Rishi Sunak?
Not talking about him, talking about your boss.
Well, no one shapes Labour Party policy except the Labour Party.
You do take money, though, from a guy who also supports Just Stop Oil.
We discussed this last week.
Yeah, let's talk about it again, because it's coming up again. In fact, the Prime Minister was obviously listening, because he's writing about it in the paper.
Well, I hope he watches us every week. But anyone who donates money to the Labour Party doesn't buy policy. That doesn't happen.
What would you say in response to the Prime Minister on this specific issue? Not about his green policies, on what the allegation, which is a serious allegation.
The allegation is that if someone donates money to the Labour Party, their buying policy is flat untrue. That's what I'd say to the Prime Minister.
OK. And what would you say to the Prime Minister when he's also talking about the fact that Just Stop Oil are continuing to cause issues with sporting activities to the extent where they potentially could try to ruin more events during the summer, Wimbledon, who knows. He's having a meeting at Downing Street and calling in the relative bodies to say, how are we going to make sure this doesn't
I'll tell you
happen?
what he's trying to do.
What's he trying to do?
He's trying to make Just Stop Oil the running mate of the Labour Party. That's what he's trying to do. They're not the running mate of the Labour Party. I will condemn, in just as strong tones, the disruption of sporting events, people blocking the motorway, things like that, as the Prime Minister does. And the Labour Party makes its own policy. Nobody else makes policy for us.
OK. Talk to me just before I let you go. Genuine devolution. What's all that about?
Well, I think that, we published a big report on this in the autumn. Keir Starmer's very committed to this. Local leaders, and I should say, by the way, we lost our local leader over the weekend, Councillor Ian Brookfield, and my condolences go to his family.
Yeah.
Local leaders like Ian Brookfield and others, they know their local areas. When it comes to issues like skills, the workplace, what local employers need, there is a local knowledge and feel for things that no government minister can have. So more devolution of powers to local areas will be part of what we want to do if we're fortunate enough to be elected next time.
OK. It's good to see you as always. Thanks very much indeed.